as we go through our 23 R1 new features. So I'm just going to do a quick check before I advance this with the SVA team. Is everything visible from your side? We're able to see the presentation. Perfect.
Yes, it is.
Great. So I'm John Rosine, and I'm joined here by my colleagues, Logan, Kaylee, and Tanya, who will go through a number of features throughout the day today. As we jump into it, we do want to kickstart here with just a quick agenda overview so you know what to expect on the day today. First off, we're going to have a review of the upgrade process, a quick snapshot into the versions, the lifespan of those versions, and what that upgrade process will ultimately look like. Then we'll get right into the meat of it with our features list. We'll have our new feature highlights that I'll review before turning it over to Logan for an additional demonstration. And we kind of wanted to take a modified approach to this and how we've done it in the past and really focus on a few key areas across the board. So you can see that we'll jump into usability, core finance, CRM, inventory and order management, manufacturing, and projects and construction. So we really wanted to pull out some key features in each one of these core modules. And then we'll also be discussing some of the integration components, and Kayla will be walking us through those. We'll wrap up with an introduction into our next few webinars here that we'll have coming up. With the 23R1, there's a lot in here, and so we're really looking forward to the webinars here that'll be following this one, where we explore these in a deeper setting. And also, too, there's a few tools that we'd like to introduce. So a lot coming up here for the SVA webinars that we look forward to sharing. All right, first and foremost, as we get into our initial release notes here, as some of you are aware already, Acumatica does release a detailed list of all the enhancements that have been made. And so in the deck here, we will provide that link to you so you can go ahead and review these pages for additional detail. It's really well broken down by core function and each area of Acumatica for navigating through those release notes. And I think I have up here just a quick snapshot into what that looks like for your visibility. For those that haven't reviewed yet these release notes, you'll see that this is just about 260 pages, but within these release notes, very well linked to go through any one of these in particular. So we'll have that for you. In addition, we also encourage utilization of our community, the Acumatica community, to submit new ideas. As we see these improvements from Acumatica, a lot of them do originate from feedback from the partner and the customer community. So it's really important that you stay actively engaged on that. And if you have any questions for those first utilizing the community, we're happy to assist with it. As we explore versions, so right now we're going to be looking at 23R1. Every year, Acumatica has two core versions that are released, R1 being in this April-May timeframe, and then R2 around the October-November timeframe. So as these are released, we do like to do this initial overview of that, and then we can work with any of you that are going through that upgrade process on more specific features that are specific to your environment, your organization. On top of these core version updates, you can also expect smaller, minor build updates from Acumatica that typically address bug fixes or immediate issues that have been received from the community. And these come at varying degrees. We can see build updates every 2 to 8 weeks. And so that is another process outside of the core R1 and R2 versions that are released by Acumatica. Right. And on the product support lifecycle, we have a breakdown of our versions and the initial release dates of each one of these for Acumatica. You can see 21R1 on the soon-to-be expiring side for Acumatica, and 21R2. We're past January 23. It's incredible how fast the year moves. Sometimes I lose track of where we're at on that timeline. But you can see roughly here an 18-month expectation until a version is retired. So with that, when we take a look at the necessity to upgrade, we'll just go through the upgrade process here and what we typically see in that upgrade process. And Tanya, please provide additional commentary if you have it around this. But our recommendation, despite an 18-month expiration of a version, we recommend an annual upgrade so it becomes a part of your business process, and you don't have to worry about a particular version going out of date. And then if there are specific features that are released in an R1 or an R2 version outside of that annual window, performing an upgrade so you can take full advantage of those new features. But minimally, an annual cadence around that is what we most often recommend. So as you're taking on the upgrade process, what you can expect with going through that is initially a planning session that has to happen, a deep dive into customizations, any code that is deployed within the environment, workflow, certain procedures that exist within Acumatica, how those changes have been affected, and how they need to be perhaps rebuilt or modified to be supported in a new version. We will also see a sandbox that is available to you through the upgrade process. So that will be a copy of production, and that is your production site. Go ahead, Tanya.
I was going to say that the sandbox provided by Acumatica is for SaaS, software as a service customers. We do have customers that have a private cloud environment. So we'll address that differently.
Perfect. And with the SaaS customers, we do have that 90-day sandbox that is available to you. Again, it's a copy of your production site. And so that can be helpful to carry over the most up-to-date transactions and start testing against the new features. We can test change workflows, and of course, the fun stuff, which is the new features that Acumatica. So with the SVA side in the upgrade support model, we do provide tailored training. So again, today we're going to go into the overview of the Acumatica features, but as you're going through this upgrade process, we will strip out the specific components of the upgrade that are most relevant. This can also be helpful too if you're jumping multiple versions. So going from one version to going from R1 to R2, we just have a single jump, single release notes. But if you're jumping multiple versions, it can be helpful to have a tailored training around the additional features that have been deployed between your upgrade and your current version. Also, we do like to ensure that we are thorough within the upgrade process. So we will provide piloting and acceptance test scripts to make sure that you are able to validate your business processes. Similar to those that have gone through the implementation with our team, we do have a tracking mechanism for those tests to make sure that your users are able to get into that environment and test their core business practices. And then once we have validation around the piloting and acceptance, with everything going smoothly, we would be live on that upgrade. Where Acumatica will perform an upgrade of your production site to that version. Through that process, new customization packages that have been reworked would be deployed in that particular time frame. And even though we do have a 90-day count around the sandbox, we try to strive for about a 70-day maximum timeline to be live so that we can retain a 20 or 15-day parameter on your sandbox environment to act as a testing site. So you do have the full 90 days. We try to give a little bit of a lead time on that to make sure, again, around that 70, 75-day mark is when we're truly going live. All right. Excellent. So with that upgrade process, if you have any questions on that, feel free to reach out to us. Be happy to be further engaged. And also too, for those of you that are joining us for the first time in the webinar format here, please feel free to just drop a chat if you have any questions throughout the process. I'm sure those will come up as we get into, again, the meat of the presentation, which is going to be the features overview. Just drop that here, and Tanya will help navigate that through our conversation. If they're directly related to our features that we're discussing, we'll do our best to answer them right then and there. Otherwise, we'll have a Q&A session that follows our presentation today. All right, so I'm going to go through a few of these highlights just within the deck that's been prepared here today, just a few screenshots of some additional features that Logan will not necessarily be demonstrating, but just want to give some context around each one of these areas and what you can expect beyond just the demonstration today. So on the usability side, we'll see improvements within the consolidation source for Acumatica. So for consolidated entities in the past, if you had a company that had branches that required balancing or any branch distinguished underneath a company level, we were unable to consolidate those. With the 23R1, Acumatica now offers even those companies that have a branch designation under it to be a consolidation source. So great improvement there, where traditionally we just had to have at the company level a consolidation source. We'll also see data integrity improvements, always an area of focus for Acumatica. So what we'll see to start here that I have highlighted is a reactivated company. Historically, there were challenges when a company had to be reactivated and the master financial calendar would not follow suit. Now within Acumatica, if that process does occur, you'll also be able to automatically generate a calendar for that company. An issue that has been reported in the past that happy to see resolved here in 23R1. We'll also see tax zone validation improvements as well. So by country, state, and zip, there was an opportunity to have multiple tax zones associated with those. So Acumatica now has validation processes in place to minimize that confusion with those tax zones. Additionally, if there were any changes within the master financial calendar on the GL side, a fixed asset calendar would be independently managed and could cause discrepancies between the two. There is now a synchronization feature built right into Acumatica. So if there are modifications to your periods, typically in a user-defined period setting, you'd be able to sync your fixed assets calendar along with that. So happy to see that one as well. Another issue that does occur between the modifications of your core master financial calendar. So really bringing those modules together to make sure that they are in sync for reporting purposes. So moving into some of the core finance enhancements, overall, you're going to see cleaner document descriptions. I think this is something that we're all happy to see because of, if you look at the old to new documents as an example here in AP, the check naming convention was misleading because you weren't always paying with a check. So the new document types to pay attention to, just a screenshot here, you're going to see payment references. You're going to see a cleanup of the refund information. You'll see this on the AR side as well, where when you're in those modules, it's simply a refund, not a vendor refund or a customer refund. You'll also notice a few different references here for quick check, now being referred to as a cash purchase. And so something to be aware of as those document types change, just user interface cleanup to make the experience better for each one of the users. Also within the core finance side, you'll see additional plugins for credit card processing. So authorize.net, Stripe, and now a custom feature as well to integrate credit card processing for that AR. And again, as we continue on, Logan has additional features within each one of these areas that he'll be demoing. So there's much more to come on the usability, core finance, and each one of these modules as we progress. Within CRM, one of the challenges that we've encountered in the past is the reporting out of the module. And so what you'll notice in 23R1 is a lot of out-of-the-box reports for opportunities and just general CRM inquiries. And so you can see I have captured here just a few examples with opportunity summary by close date, an opportunity summary by close date with a drill down as well. You can see a side panel enhancement here. So you can track by salesperson those opportunities. So overall, we're going to see quite a few improvements around this reporting, and this will be the theme throughout other modules as well. And most importantly, just for CRM, where it had been, this is a great enhancement to improve visibility into your pipeline. Additionally, there is a deduplication process that had been historically introduced to Acumatica. Just a quick note on that, there's going to be additional fields that you can add in now to your deduplication process to remove the duplicative leads, contacts, or business accounts that you have in your system. So that mapping now has been extended to include additional fields for you. So a few notable additions on the inventory and order management side as well. You'll see right out of the gate here, the role additions. Now, this is something that has been a long-standing request. So our team, I know, is very excited to see these be built out for our sales orders, purchase orders, and inventory. Historically, we had actually, SVA had been deploying standard roles that followed a similar framework here, but now that is going to be predefined roles. And you can see the tiered level that exists between each one of these roles with an admin, manager, clerk, and viewer type level, with some additions depending on the module that we're looking at. So we'll see specific roles for receiving and shipping in the inventory side. And Acumatica building out the predefined user role section. These particular areas up until 23R1 were an area that Acumatica had been lacking in. So really helpful to have these applicable to your team. One piece of it as well, I know this is on the inventory and order management side, but you'll also see the master data entry. So we now have predefined roles to help facilitate that separation of duties between customers, vendors, and inventory, the management of those master data records. And so building out on those roles, at least from a starting point, you can have certain separators as a team member is creating a customer versus those that should not be able to create or update customers. Hopefully we continue to see this expanded on as well. Just again, identifying the critical components within an environment that needs to have a separation of duties and pushing this forward within your master data. One helpful piece here as well is that Acumatica has a archive policy. And with that, it is system-wide, but one important piece that I would like to point out in the inventory and order management, where we do have a high volume of transactions, you are able to set an archive policy in place within your system to save on the document storage, the performance of Acumatica, again, for those high transaction environments. What's helpful with that archive process, again, that puts the documents in that archive state. You can still access them, but they won't be active documents for you. Again, hopefully improving performance issues that have been reported in our high transaction environments. On the manufacturing side, a few pieces that I did want to point out is the production order workflow. We'll see enhancements around the user interface. So in other areas of Acumatica, we've seen a consolidation into how transactions are processed. And so you can see a few screenshots here with how the remove hold is being lifted from the production order maintenance screen as a checkbox and now into an actual workflow. And also too, one helpful piece on the production order side is that we can now create labor transactions directly from the production order. Historically, you had to go in through the labor transaction screen. In this, connecting the dots for the labor that's coded to the production order, very helpful to navigate directly from the production order itself. You'll also see additional improvements, as Logan will show, within side panels as well on the user interface. And another note here as well is that there is a process, the process in place now for Acumatica to deallocate any unused materials. So overall, a lot of enhancements around the manufacturing, the production order process. And Logan will show you a few more of the user interface enhancements that have been brought in here. Really an area that I think Acumatica has extended well into. And then as we look at projects and constructions, projects and the construction module. So similar to what we saw on the CRM side, we'll see Acumatica has worked diligently to improve the reporting components of our projects. We'll see, most notably to start, you'll see an AR by project aging reports that you can now run in Acumatica. In addition, you'll see improvements across all of the reports that are exposed within that module. So there were issues with certain display components of each reports, the parameters that followed or the parameters that preceded running those reports. And so really the full list of project reports and inquiries have been enhanced. They have been addressed. And so really excited to see the improvements in the project and construction reporting functionality. A couple other notes is as Acumatica has continued with the project-specific inventory, there are continued improvements around that tracking against the project. Now, historically, for those of you that were a part of it, we did have that limitation in having a project linked to a certain location. Now we have the opportunity to track inventory truly by project and not be isolated to the specific location of that inventory. Additionally, within the construction side specifically, we'll see improvements to the daily field report. Acumatica now has progress reports that feed into that daily field report along with progress worksheets that are also available through the mobile application. We'll also see improvements to lien waivers. Historically, this has been a challenge for the lien waiver process and how they were automatically generated. So now we can generate our lien waivers. You can see in the screenshot here, unconditional lien waivers generate for AP documents not linked to commitments. And so we can work through the automatic generation of those when we don't have our AP payment linked back. So improvements in how we automatically generate those lien waivers. And you'll also notice that there are multiple options for how we calculate the amount as well. Lastly, we have an enhanced workflow for how joint payments are handled. So that process has been simplified with Acumatica. This is a very deep area that we do intend on diving more into with all the improvements around projects and construction. That at least gives you a little bit of an overview of those features. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Logan here, who's going to go into our Acumatica demo environments and walk through some additional functionality for us.
Perfect. Thank you, John. I'll share up my screen then here. Are you able to see my customer view dashboard here?
Yep, we're all set.
Awesome. Then to start us off, I'm going to jump into the usability enhancements that we saw with 23R1. And just to start, so we can show both the inactivity timeout period that we can update, as well as the info tips. I'm actually just going to navigate to the user security module here, and then go to our security preferences. So one thing to note, we did have info tips in 2022 R2 of Acumatica, I believe, but there has been some enhancements from a visibility perspective. So before, if you were to highlight over a field, we would see kind of a clunky text box populate above, and that could block other screens in the system. It is now just a simple question mark, little blue icon next to the field. And if I am to go and click into this, we can then see a description of the field, maybe a little bit of useful information. But more importantly, we have that form reference right there for the field that we were just hovering over. And so if I actually click into the security preferences form reference, we're going to see this is our help documentation. And I know we're going to be discussing the timeout settings here next. So let's actually just click into our timeout settings hyperlink. And this will then bring us to what I'm about to demonstrate in a second here, our user inactivity timeout period, which we can customize from our default web config value. That's just an easy way of navigating the system to our help documentation for any specific field. There's also been enhancements in the number of fields in Acumatica that have that info tip functionality set. So I'm going to go back into our security preferences screen here. We can exit out of our help documentation. So the timeout settings here, previously in Acumatica, in order to update our user inactivity timeout period. And so what that means is how long of a period of inactivity a user has to have before being kicked out of the system and being forced to log back in. We can now simply override the web config value, which I think defaults into 1 hour. If we override that, we can then go in here and update this to 1, 2, 3, 5, or 8 hours, just so users aren't constantly having to log out of the system, log back in with their user credentials. We can simply set that here on a security preferences form. Go ahead and save that change. Another piece of our usability enhancements is going to be the ability to set out of office. And so what that means is you can redirect your approvals or expense receipt and claim creation to another employee within Acumatica. So to set your personal out of office, we're going to go into our user profile up in the top right. We can simply select our name. I'm set up as Tim Battle. That's my employee record. We can then go into my profile. And here we're going to see a new tab, which is the Delegates tab. And what this does is allow us to delegate, again, our approvals or our expense receipts and claims to another employee within the system. And so as you can see, we just need to set a period of time for the approvals to be rerouted to another employee. In this case, I have 4/19 to 4/22/2023. This is currently inactive. And so just some context to what this is, what I have set up in the system. We'll actually go into our configuration and then our assignment and approval maps. And so I'm going to demonstrate here in a second just a journal transaction approval and how this can be rerouted. And so a few things of configuration that I had set up before this call here. I had the allow reassignment of approvals for this map to be set. If this box is not set, you're unable to reassign approvals related to this specific approval map. Just a small piece of configuration there. And then just in my demo, I have my user set to be an approver for all journal transactions in the system. So with the current configuration, without that a delegate active, if I were to go into finance here and just create a new journal transaction, we'll see how it's routed naturally with no delegate set. So let's just create a line here. And then let's just select another account here. Doesn't matter for a demo here. We set 500 for each of them. And if we were to save this, looks like we're going to need a sub account value as well. We can go ahead and save. And then once you remove this hold, this is going to commit the approval to the system. Let's see if we get this last pass disappear here. All right, it's being difficult. I'll refresh my page here in a minute. But as you can see, the Tim Battle is going to be the assigned approver for this record. And let's go ahead and refresh the page. Get that last pass to disappear. And so this is the default approval workflow. As you can see, I'm going to be that assigned approver. If I were to go back into my user profile, back into our delegates, and then activate this delegation of approvals, I would then be able to go back into that same journal transaction. And if we remove this from hold and commit it back through the approval process, we should see the redirection of that approval. As you can see, Alberto Jimenez was the employee that I had this set to redirect for our approvals. For whatever reason, if you are still in the system during your out of office period and you want to approve a document that was originally assigned to you, you would simply go into the time and expenses module, hit your approvals tab like you normally would, and there's going to be an additional tab for reassigned approvals. So as you can see, we still have that journal transaction for approval from the initial approver. We now just have an additional approver that can also approve these documents. And then on the expense receipts and claim side, similar functionality that's just going to be for the creation of expense receipts or claims. You can delegate that to another employee within the system.
And also too, Logan, while you're on the screen, if you hit that ellipses as well, the ability to not just through a out of office, but if a document does truly need to be reassigned to an individual, you can have the opportunity, as long as a preference checked on the approval map, as we saw, or allow the reassignment, you can go ahead and reassign that document to a perhaps more suitable AP approver or project approver, something like that.
Perfect.
Awesome. So hopefully less reliance now on building out our work groups to support these types of scenarios, to have, again, that out of office or the ability to just reassign based off of a more knowledgeable resource on a particular document.
All right. Transitioning into kind of our core finance enhancements. If we actually go back into our journal transactions screen, when we put this back on hold, we can see another one of our enhancements, which is going to be how sub-account values actually default into the system. And so previously, if no default sub-account value was set, if you're going from an income or expense account to an asset or liability account from line to line, this would default in the same sub-account value, which might not be accurate. So, and just to demonstrate this, let's pick a income account here. And we'll set this to be CON000. And we're going to set a debit amount there. So if I were to add in an additional line, and again, this is only applicable if we don't have a default sub-account set. So typically we might see assets and liabilities have the zeros account default based on the chart of accounts configuration. But if that is not set, as you can see, if I hit into this asset account, it's not going to default in that same sub-account value, just to ensure accuracy within sub-account coding. And the reverse is also true. So if we entered in our zeros account again, and then created a new line, and went into an income account, you would see that wouldn't default for the additional line either. But if you did go from an income line to another income or expense line, it would still default in the value from the previous line. Just something to save time. Obviously, we always want less clicks, more accurate coding. So subtle improvement there.
Yep, and I think the importance here is truly where we see our sub-account department, for example, segmentation. It's really in the P&L activity. So again, Acumatica supporting that specific model to have that separation between your balance sheet and your P&L requirements.
Awesome. All right, we can discard our changes there. Another enhancement that we see in the finance module is going to be the ability to change account types on our chart of accounts. So previously, you would need some sort of a SQL script on the back end to adjust these account types. Now within Acumatica, if you have the financial supervisor role, which can allow you to close to post to close periods in other cases, another piece of that security rights now is the ability to change a liability account to an asset account. And so we're going to get a serious warning here. As you can see, this can affect our financial statements. Just gives you that heads up. Obviously, we want to be careful when making changes like this, but we can go ahead and update this. And the restriction here is going to be by our balance sheet accounts and our P&L accounts. So you can change an asset account to a liability. You cannot change an asset to an income or an expense. We're going to see an error here. We're unable to cross that line there. But if we did have, for example, if we go into an expense account here, we can change that to an income account. Just allowing you through the user interface to make these type of changes without some sort of development resource having to come in here and change those accounts on the back end. Great. Another one of our enhancements on the core finance side is going to be how we process ACH payments. So to show this, I'm going to go into our banking module, into the payment methods. And let's take a look at our ACH payment method here. And so some of you worked with the export scenarios that Acumatica provides that can be a little bit difficult to manage. Some of the wording and functionality there can be a little bit complex if you're not an expert in development. So an additional option that we have is this US ACH plugin. And once we have this selected, you're going to see a couple of different things populate here. So we're going to have this control type as well as our default value. And then more importantly, we'll have this plugin settings tab populate. And so here it allows you to make some common adjustments directly through our user interface without having to mess with those export scenarios. So a common one would be our file ID modifier. If we had our A to Z 0 to 9, if we wanted to switch this to 0 to 9 A to Z, we can simply adjust this here without having to adjust the language on the export scenario itself.
And I think the really important key here is that as we've had the export scenario available, that does typically comply for most notch files. Banks always have some modifications that need to be made. And really, this provides a much more user-friendly way to do that. And what's also nice is in populating this information through the actual batch export, you will get error codes that now directly relate to these fields. So that hadn't been available before. Just making any modifications, what we consider to be typical adjustments based off of bank preferences, consolidating that down now into a US ACH plugin format.
Awesome. And if you want to see the benefit of that, yeah, just go take a look at the ACH payment export scenario. You'll see how difficult it can be to manage. But
all the complex formulas in there.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So shifting gears here a little bit, we're going to get into a CRM improvement here. So we'll go into our opportunities tab on the left. And so just some context. So in Acumatica, you were able to create a sales quote for a business account that is a prospect. But if you want to convert or create a sales order for that sales quote, that business account has to be extended as a customer. And so in 23R1, we've actually consolidated creating that customer with the conversion of a quote to a sales order. And so we'll see this if we go into the sales quote. So just some context, this is for a prospect. If we take a look at our business account here, we'll see that this is a prospect that has not been extended as a customer. We have the ability here, and this is the previous way of extending a business account as a customer. You'd have to come to this screen here. We are now able to actually go into the sales quote, hit our ellipses, and if we go into convert to order, as a piece of this, we can create that customer right on this screen itself. So we'll see some settings here related to converting the quote to a sales order, but on the bottom, and this is the new piece of it, we have our customer ID, which is going to default in from our business account ID. We can select our customer class. So if we have a few different types of classes, we can configure our customer class that way by selecting from this dropdown. And we can also add in a customer email. It looks like we already had a few on the business account itself that will pull in automatically. And so if I hit this create and review, we can actually see the sales order that is generated. Let's give it a second here. If we hit save here, we'll then see this business account is actually a customer. And if we go into this record, we can see that business account has now been converted into a customer rather than a prospect. And then not completely new functionality, but just to kind of bring this full circle, we can see our relations here. So we can see our sales quote and the opportunity that this sales order originated from. And then obviously we have that customer that was created in that process as well. All right. And then as we are in the sales order module already, let's get into a sales order improvement. So we have an additional order type that was added in 23R1. It is going to be a mixed order type. And so what that means is you can simultaneously issue inventory and receive inventory at the same time. And so in our order type dropdown, we can see we have our MO, which is the mixed order type. And let's go ahead and select a customer here. And so if we add in a few lines, let me just pick a inventory ID here, select our top one. So we can say we are issuing, that's going to be the default operation here, issuing inventory. So if I hit, let's say 5 as a quantity for this, and then add in an additional line, and let's select a different inventory ID, select the Lego set. If I set this to a negative quantity, for example, we'll then see a few things happen. So we have the operation adjust to a receipt type. We will also see that our order total is negative. And so with this, we can automatically process a credit memo to this customer for this sales order without having to leave this screen. So if I actually just hit this prepare invoice, we'll automatically create a credit memo as it was a negative balance. And just some additional context, so if this wasn't a negative amount, it would just process as a normal invoice without creating this credit memo.
And also just again to emphasize a quick note on the quantity, all Logan did in that case was enter in a negative value, and that operation, as he pointed out, had automatically updated. So nice to see that response as well.
All right. Then on the manufacturing side, as John mentioned previously, we do have some enhancements to the side panel functionality. So I know one of the screens was production order maintenance. It was a few other screens as well. But if we take a look, and let me minimize my side panel there, we can see So for this highlighted value in this case, so this top one here, the AM00043, we have the ability to view the production order maintenance screen without actually having to click into this hyperlink. So if I hit on our side panel, the production order maintenance screen, we can then make any adjustments that we'd like to this record from our side panel here without having to navigate a bunch of different tabs. So I could adjust information here, and let's just throw something, test 1, 2, 3, and we can go ahead and save this. And now we'll update the record that we have highlighted here without actually going into that screen. We can also expand what we see. So make this a full version of that screen, completing our full screen without hitting into it. And we can also minimize. We also have the ability to upload files right into the side panel, as you can see here with this attachment little paperclip icon. We also have a few additional processing options. So we have a production order details for this record. Click here. We also have our related sales orders for this production order. Toggling between these, as well as some customer and bill of material information. And as this production order is in a plan status, that will kind of determine the side panel options that we have. If we went into the completed production order, for example, if I close out of this, we'll see we can relate back to the project, any related project tasks for this record, dependent upon the status in this case for the production order. And actually, so on the production order maintenance screen itself, we also have some additional side panels. So if we wanted to do analysis for this production order, we can actually do that directly from this screen. Take a look into this. We can see our quantity completed percentage, our recorded labor hours, cost variance. Take a look and scroll down here. We also have a couple additional side panel options in the screen itself rather than that list screen.
Yeah, and so for those of you that are in 22R2, at least at the production order maintenance primary list that Logan had up prior to this, you'll see a inclusion of a couple of these areas within the side panels. 23R1, they've continued to build that out along with the deep dive now into the production order specifically here. So we've seen Acumatica make this progression across multiple modules over the past few versions. We've seen that as we've started to get into the purchasing side, as we've gotten into just our generic AP processing, those types of things. So happy to see the production order extension here on 23R1. Always be on the lookout for more side panels. Always positively received.
All right, I think that's all that I had for my live demonstration here. So I can stop out my screen share.
All right, perfect. I'll go ahead and share back out my screen. As we close in on the hour here, go ahead, let's share it out.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly run through some of these updates relating to integrations. So the first one is related to BigCommerce, the e-commerce platform. So there's now a predefined import scenario for importing template and matrix items. So it just makes it easier to import any of those items into Acumatica that would have those variations attached to them. Next is a new feature for business-to-business scenarios. So there's now a separation within Acumatica of those business-to-consumer entities versus the business-to-business entities to eliminate user confusion. It's mainly beneficial for those B2C companies to ensure they're only seeing and using the entities within Acumatica that they're using on their e-commerce site. The next is the support of BigCommerce meta fields for order imports. So within BigCommerce, users are able to create custom fields relating to products, customers, and orders. So with 2023 R1, the meta fields within orders in BigCommerce can be imported back into Acumatica. A few updates regarding the data preparation and processing. Within Acumatica, you've had to prepare and process that data to sync back and forth between the BigCommerce platform. With 2023 R1, you can now do that within one task, which can save time, especially when syncing a large amount of data towards the beginning of that integration process. And along with that, there's a limitation on simultaneous processing of records. So it's more efficient to process these records. You can now set a limit to ensure it's not stopping partially through that process for larger numbers. And then lastly, there's a filtering of data during the merging of duplicate records. This specifically relates to customer records. If a customer is creating an account in BigCommerce that already exists within Acumatica, typically this would be the same email address. It would not be recreated within Acumatica upon the sync. So it just eliminates the need to fix that error after the fact. Quickly with Avalara, there's the improved processing of use taxes calculated by Avalara. So in 2023 R1, Acumatica supports use taxes in AP bills so that sales and use taxes can be identified. And then lastly is the Microsoft Teams integration. It is now integrated with Acumatica. This has been something we've brought up in our past couple webinars, so very exciting. You can collaborate within a single platform, and within Acumatica, you can do things like start a Teams chat, Teams call, import files from Teams into Acumatica, share Acumatica records within a contact or channel in Teams, as well as send automatic notifications in Teams about events occurring on a record. So it's pretty quick and some exciting stuff, but I'll toss it back over to John just for a quick recap.
Perfect. Thank you, Kaylee. So as we take a look here at our next portion of today's webinar, I just wanted to open it up for any additional questions. And Tanya, I'll just ask real quick, do we have any in the queue that we need to address at this point?
We addressed it, so we're good.
All right. So if you have any questions at this point, feel free to, again, just drop them in the chat. Additionally, some more resources for you. Again, just highlighting the product ideas really do encourage the use of that community platform for any issues that you encounter submitting those product ideas. Also to share them back with our team so that we can help both those forward in the Acumatica roadmap here. Additionally, the product page and release notes. So we did our best to cover some of the core pieces, but as you saw at the beginning of the webinar here, roughly 260 pages of notes. And we didn't want to just go ahead and read all 260 pages. I think we need more than just an hour here to do that. So definitely encourage you to check that out. Upgrade next steps. If you have any questions around the features that you saw today, or if you are going through or contemplating an upgrade and you do need to reach out to us or have any questions in the process, more details on what's expected, especially for those that are going through the upgrade process for the first time, please reach out to us directly. We have the tech support email posted here. All right. And looking forward to the next couple months, as I said, we do want to do a deeper dive into some of these 23 R1 features. And also too, we will be presenting some additional tools that are related to Acumatica. So be on the lookout for a webinar invitation for May and June as well. I'm really looking forward to having some additional webinars here throughout the year. Quite a bit on this roadmap. And also too, as we look into the extension of 23 R1, want to do, like I said, a deeper dive into these functions, really focused around projects, construction, the inventory and order management. So just be on the lookout for that. All right. And with that, I think that takes us to the end of our content here today. So I'll go ahead and I'll stop sharing my screen and just make sure that we address any questions here in the last few minutes. And from my side, Tanya, it looks like the queue is pretty silent at this point.
It is. That means you guys did a good job.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And we hope that you have a great day. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team. Always happy to help.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.